The mind's eye is the interior of your imagination, your imaginings. When we close our eyes, we have a dark moment. And if you really, really have trained yourself well, you can hold that dark moment for a while and you can actually see thoughts light up inside your mind with your eyes closed. So at that point, you have a completely separate oculus. A lot of people only think the eyes only see outwards. The eyes also see inwards.
Yeah.
So the mind's eye is basically the opening, as some people will say, the opening of the pineal gland or the third eye, that kind of thing. Really, if we break it down without making it complicated and sounding so far out, you can simply say it is bringing your imagination to life.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast.
The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcasts are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Nigel, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me back on.
Yeah, this
Good to
is
see
kind
you
of like
again.
it's kind of like take two, because the first time
Yeah.
we recorded, we had a good recording, and something happened with the sound.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that.
Yeah. Sometimes when the information is coming out, if there's a holdup, you have to get over the holdup.
I apologize.
But,
I have
yeah.
my allergies are going crazy right now. My eyes, one of my eyes slightly open and swollen, so I'll do the best I can.
I believe you. At this point, you're here. This is a professional situation right now. We're going to put this together for sure.
Well, maybe you could share a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do, if you don't mind.
No problem. My name's Nigel Perrymond. I am an author, entrepreneur, businessman. I am now working myself into the social media area, but most known for my books, the Mind's Eye book series, and my upcoming book called Pathway to the Infinite, which is a mental metaphysical memoir for triumphs. It's a book about mapping out your interiors of your mind and imaginations to find new ways to enlighten yourself and bring enlightenment to your world.
Yeah, thank you. And you talk a lot about mental metaphysics versus regular metaphysics. Like, what's the difference?
Mental metaphysics is interior work designed off the exact same principles as metaphysics. So metaphysics is basically the exterior study of things that are super, super micro, like the finest particles in the air, and on a subatomic level. And what we found, obviously, the science, we now found that we live in, a potential, multi-dimensional universe because of what they found in quantum physics, which just leads a little bit further down the road. So mental metaphysics is using the same scientific principles and reverse engineering them through a sacred alchemy or sacred algorithm, or if you want to call it that, and learning how to use those scientific principles to unlock different aspects of your imagination and your thinking pattern. So the overall procedure, the entire process is sacred, but you and I and most people on here, probably about 90% know it as parts and pieces. They know some things like affirmations. They know some things about energy healing. They may know some things about chakras, but not all of those things combined into one area under one roof, which is mental metaphysics, because at the end of the day, all of this work starts inside the mind.
If you don't mind, maybe you could share a little bit about your upbringing and your journey to this point, because how did you get all into this?
That's a good question. My upbringing was very solid. Lived in Illinois, was born in Georgia, raised in Illinois, the Midwest. And my mother and father, both very spiritual people, very, very endowed with great knowledge on that end. I got into this simply through life's journey. And what I mean by that is just going through the roadblocks and stumbling blocks of life, learning different cultural mannerisms, being around different people. And I've learned to absorb different types of information a little bit differently than most people. And I believe it hurt me because sometimes you can have a lot of intelligence, but not a lot of a lot of practical wisdom to use it, you know. Um, and so I was always one of those people who was somewhat separated because of this high intellect. No one really understood me, and that drove me to separate myself out of anger and out of being disappointed with, you know, basically how my life was going, because I feel alienated because, you know, no one got me, no one ever understood, you know, my level of information or how I would even understand some of this stuff. And so that led me into drug use, that led me into poverty. And in a moment of like this horrible moment in life, zero everything, I came across a reading that had some parts of this sacred pathway inside it. Unbeknownst to everyone else and even myself, I didn't actually know that I understood a lot of these things until I read this book. When I read this book, everything clicks. And so I began a new process, a new procedure in life, started from ground zero, literally homeless, you know, stricken, everything that you can imagine you could throw at someone. This is our starting point. And from that moment, I decided to start really looking inside my mind for answers, because everything exterior was not providing those answers, and everything that I already had acquired in life did not provide those answers either. So I still have to go to another place. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I asked really tough questions, and I slowly started noticing that specific things would happen to give me a little boost and encouragement to my question. And it was at that moment that I started intensifying my process. So what we're talking about here is freeing the mind from left hemisphere or material attachments to absolutely zero, like starting over with a fresh garden, consider your brain as a farmer. And this is basically my procedure for removing and recropping. The exact same thing a farmer would do. They would go out, they would till the land, they'll have to tear everything out of there, pull all the weeds out. That's what you have to do with your mind. You have to sit there and look at it very deeply and know all of the things that are driving you up the wall, or driving you into a negative space, or just dead information, because there's a lot of dead information to carry around. Um, and it was in that moment of freedom that I started noticing within my procedure different tones, let's say, within my mind. So at this point, I learned to listen to that tone a little bit more often, and notice that it had its own character, its own mannerism, and it would, you know, see through my mind while I'm walking around, you know, doing normal work or normal activities. And it's just like a normal thought, which is kind of intrude when you're driving on your way to work or something. All of a sudden, a thought just pops into your head, you know, entire scenario. And so I began to trust it. So at that point, I'm like, we'll start asking questions, see if we can get some real interaction here. And much to my surprise, while in meditation, I received the answer to that. And by doing so, I unlocked myself into a whole nother genre of things I never knew existed. And all of this is within a 4-year period of time, mind you. So my education level, probably, you know, I've had some college, prior Air Force, Aerospace Engineer. I worked for Microsoft before as a product specialist. You know, we're launching products like .NET, SQL Server back in the day, you know. And so my intelligence level and my IQ is definitely there on the level. I've never considered myself to be schizophrenic or have any type of mental dysfunction. Yeah, mental dysfunctional problems, right? And this experience, once it commenced, began giving me those signs of schizophrenia, or what we have being schizophrenia. And so a little hesitant on being fearful about that. Because, obviously I don't didn't necessarily want to live the rest of my life with something that I can't control going on inside my mind that no one else around me can understand, So it takes a level of true understanding and paying attention. And what I found and what has led me now to this celestial connection, which that has now brought me into a much larger collective celestial situation. And all of this information merely comes directly out of that communication and the visual imagery that they would show me. And then after that, I would just get up and apply. You see what I mean? So that's in a nutshell, breaking it down for you, kind of how I got here on the situation. But that's what led up to this whole thing with the mind's eye and the pathway to the infinite, and being a mental metaphysical memoir for triumph, because we're trying to outdo ourselves as human beings on Earth. We're now in a different stage where we need to upgrade instead of thinking that evolution is going to help us grow another tail or something. It's time for us to upgrade mentally into a new genre, a new class of beings. And I think that's really what this awakening thing is all about. That's what the buzz is all about right now.
You talked about celestial communication. What does that mean? What happened? How did that come about? Where were you
that's a good question. Oh, before I became knowledgeable of the history, the moment that I first witnessed it, I was in jail, actually. I was waiting out some time. COVID was there, so people were kind of separated. I started to wear masks. It was one of those situations. And again, I really sought very, very heavily to see what's wrong with myself, what's wrong with my mind, to put me back in this weird situation in life, And I started the procedure, like I said, roughly about 3 weeks into that, I got my first sign, and that sign merely said, "Help me." And on that one, it was an external situation. It kind of baffled me at first. I legitimately thought it was someone on the other side of the cinder block, because, I hate that if you ever gone to jail, but if you have, these beds are, and the walls they're bunched together. You know what I mean? So when you sleep there, your head is directly on the cinder block. So in my brain, at first, I thought maybe there's someone on the other side of the cinder block. Let's blow it off situation and move forward. And while in meditation, I noticed that I had touch and go experiences. Like I could hear someone speaking, but I couldn't dial it in completely. It just kind of sounded like a muffled tone, almost like it's someone being covered, but still trying to speak to you. From that day, from the first day of contact, which was helped me, roughly 4 weeks later, I gained a deeper understanding of sound. I caught a book in jail, which is mind-blowing, and it detailed how sound travels through frequency and sound vibration are what the mind actually uses to transform energy and information. It sounds really far out, right?
Yeah.
And so as soon as I got this information, I'll tell you why, a little bit later, I'll tell you exactly why that's very relevant. So as soon as I got that information, my brain all of a sudden lights up, and I'm thinking, okay, so now we're talking something different, because, I moved around in this facility. So it's definitely not someone on the other side of the cinder wall, whatever the case may be. I've already been checked out medically and everything, no problems. Complete 1,000% healthy. They have no answers for me. And so I began to explore at this point. And I noticed that while I was doing artwork or meditating, again, like I said, I would have these touch and go experiences. And so a month later, after first contact, I'm in meditation, and I had started my procedure of auto-suggesting, self-suggesting, self-hypnosis, if you will. And during my meditative session, I noticed through the sound an interruption. And when this time it came in very clearly and asked me, do I believe in what I'm doing? My response was, yes, I believe. The next question was, do you want the answer to your question? And I responded, yes. So while in meditation on the floor, the dark vision behind your eyelids actually moves. A lot of people don't know that. It is very fluid. Sometimes I looked at it for hours and hours, and it's very, very fluid. It's active, right? And so within this dark mass on the backside of my eyelids, I can see like myself being elevated. I can see passing walls, passing pillars, passing people. And I reach a set of doors. They open, and it's more movement. And then they permit to ask me a couple questions, which is very fun. Who's your favorite president? Which is John F. Kennedy. What's your favorite automobile? Which is Range Rover. And who's your favorite person on Earth? Which is Elon Musk. And after I answered those three questions, they gave me the answer to my question. And my question was, am I going to be a best-selling author? And I received the answer, and I received a little bit more information. And then at that point, I understood that this was going to continue. Right. Because this is a long session now. And mind you, I'm inside a jail cell. I've got 6 other guys like on bunks around me. I'm one of those type of people who I'm not afraid to do what I have to do, even in front of someone else if it's embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we, as humans, we really, really stop ourselves out of fear of what other people think about us. So I'm on the floor facing a cinder block wall in formal meditative stance, and all of this comes through. I get up off of the floor, I look at everybody in the room, and the voice continues and says, do you believe now? And I said, yes, I believe. And from that point on, it has been ongoing. And initially started with a single individual talking to me, but now I've realized, I think I told you this once before, it's roughly about 5. And there's a definite intelligence that operates through all of that as one. So even though, for instance, my main contact is a female, I hear male voices. I have family, all kinds of things that happen for random time to time. But when there's something direct that has to be said, like inspiration on my work and all of the wording that I use and things of that nature, all of that becomes one solid voice. And so Pathway to the Infinite is a book about the infinite intelligence. And you can use any reference that you like, God the Father, you can use, Allah, Al-Ra, you can use any of these names, because at the end of the day, you can't count anyone out on the planet. You see what I mean? That's our biggest downfall. It's just counting out other people on the planet and what they've learned as a secondary or a third or a subsidiary or not even a valid practice. Some people don't think like Buddhism is a religion. It's a way of life. You have to go back and forth with these things, but still kind of discount it when it comes to the higher dogmas. And so by having that, we are basically taking away from this natural divinity that's within every last one of us. It has to be expressed differently through each of us, because each of us have a different part to bring forth. If that makes sense. So how one person sees it may not be the same as another. How 50 people see it may not be the same as 2 other people see it. But these 50 people can dominate these 2 people. You see what I mean? They can dominate these 2 people, and that's over time, that 50 has now turned into millions. That 50 has turned into billions. And you have a very, very small select group of people who have these higher gifts. And it's looked at as an occult practice or something that, we can't give actual credit to, which is, the reason for my statements on mental metaphysics, because metaphysics and quantum physics is still the study of an unseen principle. It's invisible by all definitions. You know what I mean? And so when we look at that invisibility, we have to say, what is it within us that can create this divinity? What is it within us that creates all this beauty around us, all these objects that we rave over, all these trinkets that we go out and buy? These are thoughts from someone who could have been down on their luck and just had this eureka moment of an idea, and that brought them from absolute true poverty into a state of wealth. But at the core of it is still a thought. And so what we've done is we've conditioned ourselves to basically look outside of that. What we're doing is we're worrying about materials. We're worrying about seeing something physically in order to believe it. And that's why the difference between like spirituality and religion, that's really where that comes in. And that's what makes the difference for each person.
Thank you. Who is this individual or celestial that you're channeling? I know you talked about her name was Susan.
So I believe once before, I think I was telling you that she had like an Akkadian background, and that is not necessarily true.
Really?
What I've learned is that I was asking the question about history, because one of my deeper questions is to know what happened. How did we lose this grip? And even if we lost it, why are those people who lost it still punished, in my opinion? So I was going through a lineage, and that lineage brought me into an Akkadian history. Come to find out, that was one of my former selves living in that lifetime, but they are Palladian, not Akkadian. Akkadian was just basically giving me some history on myself, and I learned a bunch of other things after that. And so she, once after, like, let's say after the first experience and the second experience, when I realized that this was going to be 24/7, she also gave me the history of how long she's actually been in contact with me. So from birth, I remember my memory goes back before preschool. So I remember a very young age. And at that very young age, I remember watching shadows walk around the bedroom in our old house in Georgia, in our old family home. And I could see shadows at nighttime, which is crazy. I was a kid, and they always put me on the edge of the bed. So at night, I'm the one on the edge of the bed while this thing is walking around. But every time I would wake up and open my eyes at the exact same time at night, every single time, I still do now. They'd be, they would be standing at the edge of the bed, and then they would walk over. But as a child, I'd be so afraid I would cover myself up and wait, like go away or see what happens. And then I would pull the sheets back down, and the whole process would start all over. After that, I was teased as a child, put out in the dark all the time. I used to be afraid of the dark. And I could clearly hear a voice always telling me that you don't have to worry about being afraid of the dark. There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm right in front of you, standing right in front of you. That used to spook me out hearing that too, Right? And then that disappeared roughly, probably 27 years. Nothing. It's completely nada. And once I moved to Colorado, I was going through a very, very tough time, and I started hearing it while I was walking along the streets of Colorado. And always concerning, very, 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 very kind, very, very loving, but just I could not grasp the concept of what was being said versus what my physical life is going through, and what my mind and my attitude is telling me. So I'm fighting my own brain in between good information, and then leading up until that, I had an actual near-death experience, which I can't say it was near-death because I was teleported to another location. That is what opened my eyes. That happened here in Colorado, not too far from far away from where I live now, on a highway, which is 24 hours, super packed, never, ever a dull moment on that highway, no matter what time of day you're traveling. And on this occasion, it was roughly about 9 p.m. I had a witness. There was someone in the vehicle with me. Okay, this is crazy. We're at a very busy intersection. It's my friend's birthday, so we're laughing. We're both upbeat. We're both awake. We see traffic. There's traffic on my right-hand side and traffic in front of me coming back towards me. So, on both angles, traffic. The last thing I remember was the two of us laughing and smiling. We go roughly about, I'd say, 800 feet from the traffic light, 800 feet. And then I don't remember anything except for a bright flash, massive bright flash. All of the airbags in my Range Rover deploy. My left arm's on fire. We're in the center of the highway when this happens. So as this flash happens and we come to or whatever, I'm in the center of the highway going about 60 miles an hour. Left side of my truck's on fire completely. So, I'm skidding around because now it's like I'm trying to gain control of the vehicle. And I didn't go off the road. I didn't hit a guardrail. I didn't destroy any grass or property. Get out of the vehicle, pat myself off, everything. Look at the left side of my truck, and it's completely mangled. Like Freddy Krueger and Jason just went ballistic on the side of the truck. That's insane. Insane. The right side of my vehicle, completely pristine. Nothing. Now, I'm out of the vehicle. There's no traffic around us at all. Zero traffic. Not a single car in front of us or behind us. Not even a car coming down the highway to just see us on the side of the road. Nothing. Nada. So I walk back to I'm looking at the stoplights, trying to figure out like what happened. And so I'm thinking there's another vehicle that's got, my truck's mangled. So there's has to be debris, tire marks, something. Nothing. Not another vehicle, no tire marks, not a single thing. By the time I walk back to my vehicle, a white Mercedes pulls up. A lady in the car, and so my vehicle's kind of in the middle of the road. She's in the middle of the road, stops. They stop. Highway that says with the traffic 24 hours a day. Still no cars coming or going now. She pulls up, asks us if we're okay. We tell her everything's all right. She was more than concerned. So she asked a few times, and then she asked if all of you guys are all right. So it's only two of us. So we kept wondering why she kept saying all of you guys. She pulls off. I see her car lights disappear. And when I see her car lights disappear, I finally realize that there's a white Ford F-150 parked on the same side of the highway that we're on, a little bit in front of us. Wow. And I'm like, right on. Somebody saw this. We go up to their truck. Yeah, we go up to their truck. These guys are blaring country music. They work for a water company. They're blaring country music, wide awake. So we start asking, did you see an accident that just happened like literally right in front of you? Because their angles like this. No, we didn't see anything. And I'm like, you didn't see a car or nothing? Like, all of this. You're looking at the stoplight. I'm looking at the stoplight. We had to see something happen. They were like, no, we've been here all day and all night. It's been awake with, wide awake. It's like, okay. So I left it alone. 2 days later, I have a friend come over to my house and he says, what happened to your truck? Where's your truck at? Because everyone kind of like our age. The first thing coming out of my mouth is, where's your truck at? And I tell him about the accident. And I get to the part where I told you, and I told him, I get to the part where I was at the stoplight and started walking back towards the stoplight to see if there's shrapnel or, car parts or something. By the way, there were no car parts either. That was, so no, we couldn't even explain where the car parts went, literally. So there's no car parts, just the truck being completely mangled up, like it's who knows what. And so, before I tell him that part right there, and the first thing he tells me is, he goes, did you see a white Mercedes? and I'm blown away. My first mind, obviously, because we think left hemisphere, material minded. My first mind is like, it's probably his aunt or a relative or some of his friends. Somebody, saw me, saw his truck, told him the story. So he came by the house to see what happened, kind of some nosy stuff, right? That's not the case. So he proceeds to tell me that there has been reports of like unexplained activity on this highway, okay, where an angel has, unexpectedly saved highway truckers, because that's what typically drives on that highway, saves truckers or people off of this highway. And the only thing that they can remember is a white Mercedes. So that was the first thing. Right. My friend who was in the vehicle with me arrives at the house roughly about 2 weeks later, and she is hysterical. And she's talking about we were teleported. We were teleported by an angel. Our lives were saved. We got purpose in life. All this stuff's going on. And then she tells me the reason why the lady kept asking if all of us or we all were safe, knowing that it was only 2 people, was because she also found out that she didn't know she was pregnant. She had found out that she was pregnant. So she was, carrying the baby at the same time this situation went down. This experience for her, and even for myself afterwards, what I always did was start giving credit to this angel that loves me so much, that saved my life like this. Because now I can't deny this anymore. There's nothing I can say that could even explain a situation like that, other than there's something else. I'm designed for something else. And I still didn't get it then. It took me 3 years after that to really catch on. I've got a different purpose in life. And for her, it has almost destroyed her. She's, talks about it, but hasn't figured out the way or settled herself down to really figure out what her purpose is. So she's still going the opposite way, using the fuel of the incident to fuel negative behaviors and other things. Does that make sense? Some people do that, They lose a cousin and the only thing they want to do is go out drinking. So, and so I definitely, wish her the best of everything. We talk from time to time because every now and then that story comes up, but that's how Suzanne has really dictated like a truth in my life, other than what has transpired from this connection staying 24/7. So now it's designed into a much, much higher arena of things that we can talk about.
So do you utilize Suzanne on a regular basis?
While we're talking, I when this experience happened, I was told what my purpose was and why I'm designed to bring out this information in a different way for people. I was also told that it's not going to be very easy, because a lot of people are well off. That's what we're fighting against. People are comfortable. There's billions and billions of nice homes in every country. So if we come to them and say, okay, well, this is we are now evolving the human mind itself into another category of understanding. We're no longer using psychology, because psychology has failed us. Psychology has failed us. If psychology were actually working, we wouldn't have, every year, we wouldn't have a higher spike in mental health issues, mental health problems, mental health cases. And so we have now a mental health problem. So if people are studying psychology, all of these people graduating year after year after year, what's the problem? And so the problem is that we have information that was once valid, but is now outdated. But since it's outdated and no one's really concerned about this, what they're doing is they're using the psychology against us. Because now we have, the advent of technology. And if you know anything about psychology, you would know that the brain itself is very fertile. You can implant information in it in such an abundant way that it'll believe exactly what you place into it. And if it's something valid, like life-changing or an attribute, then you will start receiving physical keys to that problem in your material life, if that's what you're really working for. But by knowing that, they can slow that process down, which is why I think I sent you over some information regarding the operant conditioning and error management theory, like the flea experiment, for instance. So you start with the flea experiment, okay? You have the fleas in the jar. Through the conditioning of the fleas being in that jar, you can remove the jar and they'll stay in that same format. That basically has progressed into other forms, which is I want to get error management theory. And so error management theory, they say, they upgrade. They go from fleas now to animals. Now they're using pigeons and animals to use error management theory through a series of lights, sounds, and rewards or punishments. And by doing that, you can train an animal to do specific things. And so I've always been one of those people that was very curious as to, like, how do you train an elephant to roll around on a ball? How do you train a killer whale to jump out of the water on a dime like that, and through all of this stuff? Okay, so how are we communicating with this animal that we can't communicate with by any other function, but we can go there and see that someone is able to communicate with this animal to the point it can do these specific things. So by knowing that, we're now moving into a new era where we put this into the human realm. They start doing this on people. So, and that's just familiar territory to everyone now. Now we can talk about poverty-stricken communities. We can talk about why certain groups of people specifically act a certain way without any hope that something's going to change. So if you keep those two things together, you have now a problem, because psychology only really offers you two avenues. That's the neuroscience avenue, which is material, because you put a machine on put a chip in my brain, or you tie something else up to my mind to make something else move. That's neuroscience, still physical. It's using your brain to see something physical out here, or that in, but definitely nothing to help the person who has a mental problem. The other parts of psychology is the physical aspect of it. And that basically just studies behavior. Okay, so psychology is the study of behavior. Now, with operant conditioning and error management theory placed upon regular human beings, mass scale, how could you possibly treat someone if you're only treating their behavior? The behavior is manipulated. So at that point, you're not treating anything. You are going along with the program. You are creating the program, and now you're buying into the pharmaceutical things, buying into technology, because technology runs psychology now. Basically, anything that you pop up on your cell phone, an advertisement. We had, well, not this watch, but I've got a digital watch. You know what I mean? Now I'm tying another piece onto my body that I'm constantly thinking about, or something that's going to constantly give me this suggestion. So in psychology, if you're treating a behavior that can be altered, you're not treating a real mental behavior. You're pacifying it and allowing the old way of thinking and the old ideals of psychology to operate in a modern world. It's impossible. And so I get this information from, definitely a higher source, but the reason, you can look at it another way is take a group, take 15 people that are homeless, been homeless 5 years, just 5. Put them in brand new housing right away. You're blessing. We're going to bless them right now. We're going to grab them, put them in the housing. Hey, maybe even offer a part-time job to go along with it and see what happens. What's going to happen is you're going to end up with the exact same situation in this new area. The reason being is because you haven't changed the mental attitudes of the person. You've only changed their physical conditions. You see what I mean? So regardless of if you have wealth or no wealth, the true factor of what life is about is understanding these mental conditions, understanding your own mental conditions and what is driving those mental conditions, such as subliminal messaging, commercial advertising, which has definitely run amok. It used to be illegal. Well, they wanted to claim it's illegal, I think. But they started off in the 40s with the Daffy Duck commercial, you know what I mean? It said, buy bonds, right? Now imagine 1940s, 2 world wars, and you see on a Daffy Duck commercial, buy bonds. At that point, it wasn't subliminal. They actually had the words on there, buy bonds. But my grandfather, everyone before him, definitely all bought into bonds. And most of the anyone that was of skill at the time, they all bought bonds. So that worked. Then you have the Coca-Cola and popcorn subliminal message, which was a real subliminal message, placed into commercial advertisements right before movies would start up, right? And that was in the 1950s. Look at both of those two companies right now. The popcorn industry is thriving still, literally. You know, you don't even go to the movies and not buy popcorn. I don't even know people who do that too much, you know? And Coca-Cola is just monstrous at the period. So they knew at that point that if we could suggest to the general public over and over again a specific topic over a period of time, it'll reach their subconscious, and they will in turn go out and purchase the products. The way it works is not to put these things in front of you to make you do it right then and there. They're placed in front of you so some point in your lifetime or multiple points in your lifetime, you're going to go and pitch for it. You see what I mean? And so the biggest thing that Suzanne and this council want me to bring about first is breaking down the pathway in the simplest terms for the average person, because we're not, truthfully, we shouldn't be necessarily writing and doing all of this stuff just to help those who we know can succeed. So that's not what it's about. You know, that's not the target. You know, my target is for people that are downtrodden, you know, put into poverty. I would love those who haven't even of metaphysics or mind theory processes. I would love that. But, and it will definitely help them at the end of the day. But I'm not looking for the people who are on the higher class just to justify my process. Does that make sense? That's kind of where we're at now. You know, if I've got a little bit of money and everything else, I'm not targeting my process and my procedure at the people who really need it. I'm targeting my process and procedure at people who can buy into my program, buy into my situation. And at this point, they're at this level. You know, they're comfortable already. They're just really trying to maybe, you know, start a company, engage something. But at the end of the day, they can be successful at it, and that makes you successful. That's not how awakening works, you know. So what they really want me to bring out, and the reason for my connection with Suzanne and why it's 24/7 is because our world is evolving into a definite higher frequency state, a definite higher vibrational state, and all of those things entails the alchemy of the particles that are in front of us and around us. And the only tool, machine, or organ on earth that can transform those particles is our brains. Legitimately. You asked me about metaphysics, like the real difference, you know. Metaphysics, that's what is the external representation. So let's say when they found out at a cellular level that photons and that neutrons and all these little tiny particle atoms are intelligent. They realize that they travel at different speeds throughout the air. They put on their sound, which is first, Morse code. Then they realized that they could put information on them. So the understanding of this is that right now you and I are doing a podcast. This information is being transferred through the air seamlessly. There's no gap in this, right? So man has mastered this understanding exteriorly. And so what they're trying to do is understand and master the same exact philosophy and science interiorly. So our brains are conductors, our pineal glands are receivers and transmitters of the finest particles in the air, smaller than hydrogen, which is why I think I'm going to really get into argon and other things. But because of that, we're also capable of tapping into higher source beings that are capable of using that same transmittable information sequence to receptive individuals who have basically broken free from this protocol, the matrix, if you will, broken free from the matrix, and have allowed themselves the opportunity to catch hold of what's on the other side without fear. Because that's the big thing, fear. So that's what mental metaphysics is about versus like the physical aspects of metaphysics.
Yeah, thank you. You titled your book "The Mind's Eye: Pathway to the Infinite." What's the mind's eye, if you don't mind me asking?
Okay. The mind's eye is the interior of your imagination, your imaginings. When we close our eyes, we have a dark moment. And if you really, really have trained yourself well, you can hold that dark moment for a while, and you can actually see thoughts light up inside your mind with your eyes closed. So at that point, you have a completely separate oculus. A lot of people only think the eyes only see outwards. The eyes also see inwards. So the mind's eye is basically the opening, as some people will say, the opening of the pineal gland or the third eye, that kind of thing. Really, if we break it down without making it complicated and sounding so far out, you can simply say it is bringing your imagination to life. And some of us have learned to do that through a lot of different alchemies, such as sound, which is what I detail the most, which is sound alchemy. Musicians have this gift more so than a lot of other people because they can take a single tone and transform it into a complete story, but through sounds, we're capable of transforming information in our minds as well. And the mind's eye is basically just the unraveling of the steps necessary to unlock yourself to this potential. And any part of it can potentially do that for any person, which is what I also find fascinating. So that's what it's really about, the mind's eye.
Yeah, appreciate that. So in your book, Higher Self, Lower Self, what's the difference?
Well, the higher self is easy to talk about, and the lower self is easy to talk about. And we're going to remember those two things also, higher self and lower self, okay? The higher self is simply the envisioned person that you are persistently striving for within your imaginings. The person you see yourself as in the future. Not the person who is current is actually someone you thought about before. So what we're trying to do is connect to the person who's in front of this. So in front of us. That's the higher self. And that when people think of that, they're thinking, oh, you have to get into a higher vibration pitch and a higher this and a higher that. In reality, none of those things would be prevalent for someone starting with nothing, right? So if I'm starting with nothing, I have to stop myself and ask myself really deep questions, such as, do I want to be like this for the rest of my life? What can I do right now that in the next 3 years, because I got to think about, you have to give yourself time. What am I going to do in the next 3 years that could change this outcome?
Yeah.
And look within yourself to find out what vision occurs. What do you see in front of you when your eyes are closed and you're putting these questions out there? What transforms in your mind, in your imaginings that you see that you really like? A lot of people it's great health. A lot of people it's great wealth. A lot of people it's the combination of both. Some family, everyone's different. Some people just want to buy another house in another location because they want to travel between the two. But whatever that is the true higher self, the real spirit of who you are. The lower self is when we come here and we beat ourselves up over our inconsistencies, our laziness, our procrastination, our failures. Our lower self is what keeps us in a stalling stalemate mode. It's what pushes it off until the next day. That's your lower self. And we fight with that because we have this massive, massive block of domestication, dogma, and all this stuff. Then you have your physical body, which may not be healthy enough at the time, looking at what you envision. So your body's not healthy. You're in pain. You might smoke a lot of something. So you are, you can't get up early in the morning to accomplish things. And the lower self also uses fear, which is his number one tool. The lower self operates off of those principles: fear, doubt. If it grips you with any of them two, then it can pull you directly into procrastination. Then it can pull you completely away from what you saw your higher self as, and you're not even striving for the higher self. The higher self is just going to be this dangling thing in your imagination because that's where you want to be, but you're not putting any of this other effort into it to make that happen. And so the lower self is this material, fleshy self. You have to dominate it also. You have to control it because it's, to say we are three parts: mind, body, and spirit. We're three parts. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned through roughly more than 25 years of meditation, what I've learned is to take those parts and reverse the order. So if everything in history, to include all the teachings of the Buddha, try to guess this, Hermes, Manly P. Hall, or any of these great people, they always speak, first comes thought, then comes action. So if we go mind, body, spirit, we have to use the reverse order, spirit, body, mind, because you have to find the higher source within yourself and say, that's the target. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to meditate for this, or I'm going to perform this activity. And since you like it so much, the body, second, makes the actual physical movements to make this thing happen. And then you come into the mind, and the mind is where all the work is done, where all of the components to your puzzle are brought together for you to observe and see if they work together. See if you like this plan or not. And so that works best in meditation, which is really why that they couple that trifecta of mind, body, spirit. That's actually more so used for meditation. But if you reverse that order and go in that line, you'll find that, yeah, you thought to go into meditation first. Your body carried out the order to go into meditation. And now you're using the mind to meditate and to clarify the decisions you need to make for your future, and not hold yourself about your past.
I love that. You brought up thought. Do you believe that's where we got the word thought from? Like some people say?
I love the simplicity and keeping things simple. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that very much so, because with his writings, I've gone through so many, but with his writings, that's what they're ultimately talking about. There have been some people like Terrence Howard, as of late, it's very popular right now. And again, he has this experience. He's openly admitted it on the Joe Rogan show, a little bit. And within his experience, it gave him the understanding to look at things differently, simply. And so by him doing that, he has this entirely new creation to our what's it called, the periodic table, but entirely different situation. So we're taking something that we thought was material, and now we know that it's pure energy. It's purely designed by particles, the particles in the air, you know what I mean? Atoms. And so when I read his book, The Emerald Tablets, and then I had to get a couple of the copies of the Emerald Tablets to compare notes. He spoke about the curve. And for me, that broke it down very simple in that the number one thing that we have is through sound and vibration. Our pineal glands is exactly under that same type of pressure Terrence Howard was talking about. And if you take the outer shell of the brain, aside from the pineal gland, the rest of the outer shell is merely a buffer. It acts as a filter, legitimately, to what reaches this this piece right here.
Yeah.
But if something is suggested to you over and 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 over, it's going to reach this area and ultimately dictate how you're going to act in this world, because it's what we place inside this understanding that is going to be represented on the exterior. And the reason why the curve is very important is because a lot of times, or I shouldn't say a lot of times, but in 2024, we are people that don't have time. That's all. We don't have time for anything. We need answers on a dime. We don't wait for nothing. Nothing. If I need to find out who has the largest left toe in America, put it on my phone. Answers there. So we don't have time. We have become people who have been driven away from giving something time. Okay. And so by that conditioning, which is, again, back to that whole thing on subliminal messaging, operant conditioning, error management theory, bringing this thing into a societal situation, you have a ton of people who do not want to wait in order to gain the wealth that they're looking for, or to gain the nostalgia that they're looking for. They will rob you to do that. They'll sell drugs instead to try to get this upper edge. They try to justify it. Now we have a side hustle. We got Uber and DoorDash. You know what I mean? We got these. We have these things, but everyone is still trying to get to this point. And so the reason why the curve is important, again, is because we're not moving in angles as we've been taught in a straight line to do something. No, it's I need it from A to B or A to Z. It's still that straight line that you're talking about. And so once we hit that 90-degree turn of this roadblock, because we got all this energy built up to here, but we did not study this, we come to a dead stop. And you have to start all over again. You have to build up all of your momentum all over again. So the reason why the curve is very important is because it operates the same way as your thoughts. Right now, we're conditioned to this world the way that it is. We're domesticated. We have knowledge placed into us right at 5 years old, and we had no idea Tylenol even existed. I don't even know who Kellogg's is. All these things, Clorox, Bleach. I mean, these are brands that have been just downloaded into everybody without them knowing. We come into age of it. 6 years old, you're playing t-ball or softball, just getting to know who you are with a few friends. And what's right after the game, whole, ice cube chest full of Coca-Cola, so this message that I have now. And so how it works is you are inputting a thought at a time to catch up to what you know domestically to change your life. That's how it works. Because if you're down on your luck and you've been downtrodden 20 years, you have nowhere to go. You only have two options. Either that's how you want to be, so you give up to do it. And the other option is that you have to figure out a way mentally to break this cycle. So you have to start off with a single thought. And that thought has to be repeated with another thought and another thought and another thought and another thought. Until eventually this curve matches up with the speed that you're trying to acquire, the place where you want to be. The things you want to manifest, all of these things, but it doesn't come until after you've applied all of these little simple steps and then put the energy afterwards. So that's literally why I think thought has transformed the world in many ways. Not my biggest thing with it is very simple. They burned an etching of the flower of life into a post. It couldn't be done 200,000 years prior without some type of super high technology and a super high technological being to do it. Simple as that. So if we continue to run this notion that we're alone, that's just ignorance at this point. That's just ignorance. But if we also use the fact that we don't interiorly possess the same exact divine molecules as the higher beings possess, we don't know how to use it. It's as simple as that. And we can't make that connection because we're stuck on this domesticated protocol. We're stuck having these suggestions into our minds about how things should operate and how things should go. So, at some point when that machine breaks, you're stuck with your head in your hands and you're wondering like what I need to do to change. But in that moment, what are you doing? You're going inside your mind and you're looking for an answer. So that's the real importance of what I believe thought was trying to bring about to the world. But when the information came out, we externally brought it out. We externally transformed it into technology. We externally realized that now we have metaphysics, and externally now we understand that metaphysics has gotten even smaller. So now we have quantum physics, and externally, but those representations are also the same things that we're utilizing. Earbuds, a broadcast, we're utilizing that same technology, but we just haven't done it interiorly for our own minds to unlock that channel, which I find that's the beauty of all of this.
Yeah, appreciate it. And we didn't even get into like you were a Buddhist for a period of time, but you were raised Christian, right?
Yes, I was raised Christian. I have a little bit of Catholic background also. I transformed into Buddhism after I came to Colorado and I was having a horrible time. I removed myself from my parents' religion, which is what I call it in my book. I removed myself from the religion of my parents. And I got my IDs, all of my identification, birth certificate, my social security card, everything. It's crazy. And I tore all of it up. Tore it all up. And I threw it
out of
over
resentment?
Yes. Yeah, it was. I can't deny it. I was highly upset. I threw all this stuff over a bridge. And I told God, I was like, look, I've done, in my opinion, all the right things that I can do. And you have taken everything away from me. So I'm going to go live for the other guy. Literally. And I walked down the street and I found the first, negative person I could find to hang out with. And it was a horrible story after that. But in the midst of that, I asked a question. I'll tell you how the celestial thing works. I asked a question while I was in trouble. And I wanted to know why my mind would make a decision and my body carry it out. Even if I knew and my body knew that it was negative, like drug addiction. Okay. Because inside I'm like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. I don't want to be this person. But my mind is making this thing happen. My body is carrying it out. So my question was, why does my mind make decisions like this? Why would my mind make this negative decision like this? And why would my body carry it out even though I'm physically trying to tell myself no? Like smoking, just something, And I received my first answer. It came on a book cart. And everyone else was just running all over the place, grabbing books, a lot of Bibles, tons and tons and tons of Bibles. And there was this one book, super tiny, it's called Creative Visualizations by Shakti Gawain. That was the beginning of my Buddhist practice. And I suggest that book for anybody who wants to learn some real ins and outs of meditation practice without having to be dead into it. But what I also learned is that you have to show yourself a proof. And what I mean by proof is that if you read something that's profound, like my book per se, and you don't do the principles or apply some of this stuff on a rigorous basis, do 3 weeks, on a rigorous basis, 3 weeks, to see if you can provide yourself with the proof from the theory, then you can find out if it's valid or not. And Shakti Gawain's book proved 3 valid facts for me. All 3 of them were impossible at the time. These are detailed also in my book, but one was a movie. So being in jail, you don't have control over the TV, nor do you have control over what time you can actually come out and watch this TV. Mm-hmm. So a friend of mine, another good witness, friend of mine was starting the same path in life, same journey. And so we were both diving into this book real heavy, putting the principles together. And we wanted to bring about the movie Meet Joe Black.
There it is.
We wanted to bring about the movie Meet Joe Black. Lo and behold, roughly about 3.5 weeks into it, because both of us are putting this mental stuff out there in the air. This movie's going to come out. We're suggesting, we're putting the energy with it. We're walking around the cell acting like weirdos. And lo and behold, on a time that we like, it was just immaculately perfect because we weren't supposed to be out, all this stuff was going on, and all of a sudden, boom, this movie comes on, and we're like, we did it, And from that moment right there, man, when Nigel Black came on, I just hooked on this process of meditating. It completely took me away. And at that point, I went much, much deeper than I had previously. I went into direct Tibetan Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism. I negated any other teachings outside of that, even though I know that there's a couple other vehicles, and I know Hinduism is a big part of it, but Hinduism, in my opinion, is also the same as like a Catholicism, for instance. You always have to have this extreme on the religion side, whatever, for whatever reason, it has to be extreme, and it just has to be what it is, you know? And I started reading books from different Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and I realized not only were all of these people factual people on earth, but all of them dictated how the mind, once cleared from distractions, once cleared from suggestions, once cleared from material cravings, will unlock this gate for you and allow itself to become more playful. So, like I said, over 20 plus years of formal Buddhism, the one thing that I didn't learn up until 4 years ago was the fact that I could bring about like an imaginary counsel to really guide me along, a specific group of people, positive people, of course, because, you don't want to do anything in life anyway to continue creating negatives. So positive people into this circle, and I start meditating into this realm, and the information solidly valid. When this happens, this is when my celestial contact and all this other stuff, I believe they felt that I was more prepared to receive it than I had been in the past. And I was more prepared to understand how it operates than I was in the past. So this time around, I was given the opportunity to like witness everything full on and bring about this new information in mental metaphysics, and why it's the most important thing that they want to bring out is understanding what has been placed upon the brain that you didn't place there. Know what's been put in front of you and implanted into you that you didn't necessarily put there. We have cravings for the wildest things sometimes. I'm on like a smoothie craving right now. 3 times a week, I'm going getting acai bowls and things of that nature. And sometimes I have to back away. Is this what I really like? Why am I, what really is keying me off to this all the time? So I don't have a TV. I don't watch television. I don't have a radio. I don't have anything in my house that's just going to randomly start playing music or anything like that unless I want it to, and I only watch things that are in line with what I'm doing. So my brain does not become contaminated with something completely oblivious. And that's what we're fighting. We're fighting this oblivious situation. We're just obliterating our brain's capacity to move into another realm because we're stuck in front of the TV, roughly 10 hours out of a 12-hour day, or in front of a device, 10 hours out of a 12-hour day. So the understanding is just, really brought down into the meditative state and clearing your brain out from all the distractions and garbage that we got in there. So you have to start all over.
Yeah, thank you. They don't call it television for nothing, huh?
That's right. That's right. That's right. Tell everything, but it's also tell as in telecommunications, telekinesis. So, and if all of those things that they understand operate that way, and we can place them into the mind consciously and subconsciously, then we now have a means to kind of control people just by fear alone. We just say hey, we don't like this. There's something going on right now, and everyone's going to jump on that bandwagon. You're going to have that very small few. Remember that 2 out of the 50 that's going to be like, I don't know if this is really it, but if they don't have the power to dominate with it like that, So that's really what this awakening is about. It's about that separation. It's about removing the traditional dogmas of what we've been doing, and try that, go into a room without any technology. The first time you do that, put your cell phone in another room. It's probably going to take you roughly 5 minutes to fully clear yourself from your cell phone. And what I mean by that, you're going to make sure all the messages are taken care of. Yeah, make sure no one else sends you a message. You remind not to call someone. You got to go through this clearing process with your cell phone. And then you put that away from you. And you go into a room that has no technology in it at all. And watch how strange you feel. You know, watch how you feel almost uncomfortable for a hot second. Makes you want to kind of, walk back out there.
No, so in a sense, our free will and our perception's been hijacked through all this subliminal messaging and the social engineering that's going on, right?
Correct. And I believe you asked me one time about Enlil and Enki, and what was what did I think about them? What was the problem? And I remember telling you, it's just the basic epitome of like who we are, positive and negative, right? But really what the problem was that when he realized what gift man had, we had been given the gift of free will, understanding both positive and negative. Free will means that you understand positive and negative, and you being in the middle to make that decision. Enlil, correct.
Realizing
So
that.
yes, right. And so when he realized that, that's what took away what they call it's not the prayer gene, it's like the religion gene, like you got to get praise or something. I can't remember what they call it, but basically we had this piece in our DNA that allowed us to instantly be transformed into worship. Basically, the worship gene, I think is what it's called.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, the worship gene, yeah.
The worship gene. So they realized that they've taken away the worship gene because that's kind of the control on this end, because we now have knowledge of positive and negative. Okay, those two things I remember I told them to kind of keep in touch with, because at that point, that is what makes this system even crazier. Now, if we have free will and we understand the forms of positive and negative, but if we have something against us or just anything ahead of us that, has gained a ton of wealth from the ancient times, captured that wealth, kept that wealth, is dominating by that wealth, then at this point in time, right now, they can easily take our free will away because they're now implementing all of these different types of suggestive forces upon us. And even crazier, we get your cell phone, download a new app, and the app tells you, allow it the permission to do these things. So we're now allowing this to happen to us. On top of it, we're allowing this interruption to constantly ping back to our brains to make us think about this product, this topic, or this app, or whatever the case may be. On top of all of the things that have been implanted into your brain already through domestication. And so now you have this built-in protocol, which is basically the flea experiment. And now you have this newer type of protocol, which is technology, and it's driving force to go forward at a very high rate of speed and kind of leave people behind. If you can't catch on to how to use a cell phone, I'm sorry, we don't know what to tell you. You're just left behind. You can't use it, And then now we have these social disconnects. We have this heightened, this spike in mental health issues, mental, like as far as like the pills and things like that, pharmaceutical companies are just going wild. So we have nothing here really that's bringing us back to ourselves. We have scripture. And so that's why I tell you scripture is not about a religion. It's about psychology. They're not telling you to work with everything here and try to build another device. They're telling you to free yourself from all mental attachments. You have to let it all go in order to let your mind be free enough to connect to that divine source, which is all around us. Right. As a singular thing, and as an individual thing, and as a higher intelligent thing. You see? But if they knew that from this information that was captured in the ancient times, all the way back to Kemet and everything else, what would you want more? What would you fight for and hide the most? You would hide the understanding of that type of psychology. You would hide the understanding of that type of mental metaphysical transfer and pathway that all of these ancient people did. In ancient times, there was just sages. Yeah, there's some workers around her, people who maintain the place. I get it. But at the end of the day, they were building massive temples. They were building massive mosques. They were building massive worship areas, gathering places, all in perfect symmetry all in alignment with everything above in the heavens, because they also knew that within the heavens also resides the higher beings, because obviously higher beings came down and helped push all this stuff forward, right? So they had that understanding. And what they've done is, just after the Greeks, we get into the Romans, and the Romans are just like, okay, this is great information. We've transformed the lineage. So at this point, let's just, let's run this, because no one else knows. There's no one else there that's going to stop us from doing it. And if there was, they would have come back to do so, right? And so now we have this, this whole system built off of old information, just like Terrence Howard, really putting out that, the flower of life is multidimensional. But when the first people saw it, they, Plato and everyone else, they looked at it as a two-dimensional, flat nose situation. So they did their calculations that way, because they weren't using their imaginations. They were just using, let's figure this out. We have to hurry up and figure this out before the next person figures this out. And those people who really did have it, now you have your special groups. You have your Illuminists, you have your Masons, you have Rosicrucians, you have all of these the Kabbalists, which are fascinating, because people don't even really recognize the Jews for that understanding from the Kabbalah. They're talking transcendental meditation. That's, they're talking using your mind as a vehicle to capture something else in the future and bring it towards you. But also knowing that when you're in this place, it is governed by two things, that bipolar binary code of the universe, positive and negative energy, nothing else. And that's basically what Terrence Howard is really trying to just, tell everyone. That's what Einstein was telling everyone. I had that in my books also, is that everything is energy. That's all there is to it. Match the frequency with the reality that you want, and you cannot help but to get into that reality. There can be no other way. This is not philosophy. This is physics. Albert Einstein. And looking at that and really understanding the molecules in the air, you understand that our brains are transformative receivers on very high levels, and we can grab hold of something that is much greater than just, all of humanity. And maybe that could be a fear as to why, a lot of this stuff is always pushed down and pushed out. It's like we're doing a podcast, and, we're, at some point we're trying to get 1 million views on this. You know what I mean?
You brought me some food for thought. I'm going to think about this later. You talked about the worship gene, and Inla was pissed off because it's gone, right? Because of Inky, right? Inky was trying to, was Inky trying to make us...
Inky, what I believe, if they had not have done this is probably something no one has ever said. And if they had not have done that, then we would not have the ability to communicate to other beings and other higher levels of consciousness. We wouldn't have seen that. We would be revived, a symbiote being with basically no real figurative way to do anything. And the other reason is that, that's for them not doing that would be what happened if they didn't do that. But since he did, and the reason for him doing that was because ultimately we already had their divine gene to make us in this form, but to not give us the essence of being able to make that connection and determine for ourselves if we are going to uphold to that free will. Remember, free will, uphold to that. Then how could anything actually ever be free? It would never be free. And so they argued about that. Emil, Inky, and Nursuk argued about that. In the fact that they were tampering with this cumulative, was tampering with the genetics on Earth. They will have to make a decision on that. Their decision brought about the human race, and in doing so, they also have to protect that part. It's a part of them now. So on one end, he just had one brother who just really wanted to say, okay, we need this for control because we're not really trying to do anything else. And the other brother being more humanistic and saying, okay, we created this, And so we have to give it its free will. Otherwise, it'll never be free. We're not going to stay here because we can't stay here to operate this. So what happens when we leave? What are they going to do? You see what I mean? And so by having that free will, then comes the other design, the design of a hierarchy. And so we've always had a hierarchy, or we've always had something where we had to look at a higher situation, which is that in my opinion, that's what I call the worship gene. Let's take, for instance, anyone's famous. You have people who look up to them. Anyone who does major podcasts or anything like that, they have followers. There's people that look up to them. You know what I mean? It's not a worship. It's not like they're worshiping them, but they're idolizing them. So it is a form of worship. Does that make sense?
Well, you got me thinking about the ziggurats that were placed in the main cities, right? And each ziggurat was assigned a god, so that to worship.
Right.
So that's where it started, right?
Right. Exactly. And so I believe, initially we had multiple different races and species. And that's factual. I can't even say that's like a hypothesis. That's a factual situation. Otherwise, we wouldn't have other terms like Palladians and all these other people coming from Osiris and all. We just wouldn't have these names. We wouldn't have the Anunnaki as a name. And even in the Emerald Tablets in the text, they actually state that they accompanied by others. The Dogon tribe also, it states that they were others, from other star systems. You see what I mean? So this was a multicultural place, even on the celestial level. Multicultural. Yeah. So it really just came down to in those times they were honoring this person, they were honoring that person, they were honoring this person, and those to me they just decided to say, okay, instead of us having all these different people and kind of having people split up, let's just put it under one, see what happens. So then you get the Amun-Ra, you get the transformative situation where we come down into like a singular monotheistic understanding, right? And everyone's throwing against the monotheistic understanding. And then at the end of the day, they were going against it then to bring in the monotheistic understanding. But here we are living under a monotheistic understanding, and that understanding shuns any other understanding, even if it's valid. The problem with that is that they simply don't want all of us to be separated, because for human beings, we have a massive separation issue. We have wars in other countries because of separation, instead of really understanding that we are an organism ourselves. The color of the organism just really dictates where it's from, that kind of situation. But at the end of the day, no one of us is any different than any of the others, legitimately. And our languages dictate, how we communicate. But now we have technology. It doesn't even matter what language we speak. We could be talking here and it'll translate to Chinese on the other end, Yeah. So, and we have to come about a greater understanding that in ancient times, what those people were doing is that they were worshiping. They were giving time back to themselves to find out higher levels of information. That's how they learned about the star system. That's how they were able to make, the pyramids. That's how all of these things came about. Great architecture, artwork, metal crafting. I mean, things that we're still trying to accomplish today. These guys have accomplished 6,000 years ago and perhaps even further, because in reality, some of this stuff is dating back to almost 200,000 years.
Yeah.
At what point are we going to, try to figure out that timeline or were we shammed on that also, that information also, which is something that's one of my hidden gems I'm going to try to figure out is this carbon dating. It's horrible. It's horrible, man. It's like you can get carbon dating and one person tells you 10,000 years, the next person is like 100,000 years. So me personally, I think carbon dating was done by the same corporations that kept the information away from us. And so That's why we're all confused on when things happened, and it doesn't make any sense that, you figure the Anunnaki and all that, that's 6,000 years ago, but you have the Dogon tribe who's talking about things that happened 200,000 years ago. How is that possible? And if that were the case, how did the Dogons survive the Great Flood how do they survive, Tiamat and get here to write this stuff still? So that dating doesn't make sense. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the only way to really get there is to read and try to go on site, read and go on site. So that's going on site. That's kind of like my next couple situations now. Try to get myself planned and booked up for next year to start doing some traveling, get
That's
into it.
awesome. Well, let me know if you need someone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
roll
No
with.
doubt about it. No doubt about it.
My last, we'll run out of time, but my last question is probably like, how do you look at this thing that many people call God, Source?
Oh man. I look at God and source as an infinitely intelligent source. That's why I use the word infinite intelligence. Because I want everything is included. All people are included. All situations are included, from the lowly to the wealthy. And I look at it from my new perspective that I have a lot of work to do for myself that I can't place on anyone else. And what it does for me is it basically it keeps me motivated to know that, I legitimately asked for an angel in my life and I would receive one. I am now moving in a manner in my life that I never had before, with information that I didn't even realize I had inside my brain until I started regurgitating all of it out of the clear blue. And I learned that he does not want us to have separation upon the earth. The biggest problem we have on earth is separation. And the biggest reason for that separation is not understanding the psychological alchemy placed upon each of us. And then, by having that psychology placed on us, we then regurgitate that to our children. So we keep the cycle going. But at the same time, I get fearful information because knowledge is power, and there's people who don't want stuff like this to come out. Look at how many times, something really fantastic like this comes out and challenges the norm or the status quo. Those people are hushed up, they're thrown out, come up missing if it's too radical, you know what I mean? And I look at it as a whole. Everything is alive, everything moves, everything has its core the same way anything else. And every single thing has the exact same outcome. It all comes into existence and all goes out of existence. It all peaks, then it diminishes. If a product, a brand new laptop, a car, for instance, a home, all these things, self, people, animals, plants. So there's a cycle to this sensation that we're experiencing called human life. And that cycle brings back into material. Or if you make it out of that material loop and you make it back to the natural source, which is energy, then you have eternal life. But the only way to get yourself outside of that captured moment, which is kind of like something they talk about in the Matrix and other people with CERN about them, magnetizing stuff like that, because atoms and particles are indestructible, which means if you break us down to our finite, we're just merely energy, merely the soul. And we're connected to this divine infinite source of positive information, positive wisdom, positive light. But in its balance, there is also that duality, the duality of negative. So my theory on that duality of negative, on the high side, we take the sun, the giver of light, in any solar system, anywhere you look at it, and you look at a black hole, the taker of light. Now, granted, some people think that it just goes in there and nothing else happens. I don't believe that. I do believe that it cycles. So light comes and it has to go somewhere, just like a positive, negative, and it's transformed. But once it goes back through that funnel, it builds up tremendous heat, tremendous pressure again, becomes bright light again, because everything is being condensed right back down to the finite, and we get light on the other end of this. You see what I mean? So it's a cycle. And if we don't learn to break free of the material things that bond us, when our time comes, if we have that inkling of a thought, it brings you back. It's like in the Matrix when he says, I know this isn't steak. My mind's telling me it's steak, but I know this is not steak. You know what I mean? But I love it. I want that so much. And so when your time comes, if you haven't led up that positive situation in your life, is you're going to be struck into this cycle again, material, because you're craving it. You haven't released your mind to become free into the higher places, higher frequencies. They don't operate off of material things. They look at us. They love our lives, like Suzanne's. They love our lives, literally, but they hate the fact that we are separated, and they hate the fact that most people are too scared to find out. But they love watching our existence. They love how we tinker with things. They love giving someone that inkling, and a new creation is born. A new idea comes about. They love how we express so much, but they hate how we oppress each other through that expression, because now I need money for what I'm telling you. I need money for what I'm teaching you. And then greed comes in. It takes away from the whole situation. It takes away from the whole meaning and understanding of it. Again, my argument is with psychology and really revamping what they have taught the masses and what they're treating as far as a physical thing, when factually you can't treat a physical problem if that physical problem is being manipulated by another problem. Man, you can't do that. And so at that point, you have to treat the person. You have to treat their mind. You have to look inside, how are you thinking and why do you think that? And then at the end of the day, even with that observation, you still come back to the binary code of the universe. You still have a positive person or a negative person. As simple as that. And so we have to live our lives, according to the higher self, which is always going to be outrageous for everybody. It's always going to be, you want to be healthier. Nigel, you want to gain another 50 pounds. Nigel, you go to the gym. Nigel, get this book done. This higher self is far reaching, but if you don't strive for that, then that's when you slap God in the face. That's when you slap your celestial guides in the face, because they will give you the information and the answers to it, but we're so afraid to step out and do it. That's what changed, and that's what God is to me. God is more like just everything around us, because everything was created from the imaginings and the seed of the intention that could only be that. We just turned around and made it a negative somehow, some way, because it's binary. You can't get around that. The universe is binary. The matrix code is binary. Simply positive and negative. You have a positive thought, go for it. If you're in a messed up space and you're addicted to drugs, but your positive thought is saying, okay, just go for a walk around the block a couple times. You know what I mean? Give yourself a break before you come back. Then that's what you're listening for. That's what and then you do that. You strive for that, because you mess around and go around the block a couple times, find $10 on the ground, and then you want to thank God, right? So we have to learn to be, ferocious in our understanding of our own mind's operation. And we have to be ferocious in understanding the scientific principles and methods that are used against us to lock our brains into this single left hemisphere kind of thinking.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I really do.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
Kind of made me. Yeah, thank you. I loved it too. You made me think about that Bob Marley quote in his song, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but yourself can free your mind." So thank you for coming on.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Thank you both for having me on. I appreciate you as always. Can't wait to do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll do this again. No doubt about it.
All right, man. Well, take care.
All right.
Namaste.
All right.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a play. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on a day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.